Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening. I'm looking at out of Yahoo. Rapists who target drunk women cannot be charged with rape under New York law, prosecutors say. So, this is something recent. And so, I think women should take responsibility for some of these issues that are coming out or these issues that you're not really aware of when it comes to your body and how you're being treated or portrayed in your city, your state, the rules, such as this. This is really important because this is scary right here. So, a rapist who targets drunk women cannot be charged with rape under New York law, prosecutors say. And so let's suppose a scenario before I go into this article that you're out and you're at a club and you're with maybe a group of friends. You had a little too much to drink and maybe you can't find your way. You go to the front of the club, you go to the back of the club, or you're getting ready to leave because you're going home. And maybe you go to your, Uber or Lyft or whatever, the ride share program or whatever they have out there. And let's say, let's say it's not somebody off the street. Maybe it's the actual driver of the Uber car. They take advantage of you. Let's say you're carpooling and other people have come from clubs and somebody happens to see that you had a little too much to drink. They follow you in your apartment. There's a lot of things that can happen with this right here. This is so scary. I don't know how this could be possible, but it is. And so this is by Marisa Iati out of the Independent. And so here you have a district attorney out of New York County. The scenario is unfortunately common. So a woman goes to a bar and chooses to have several drinks. So it's almost like going into this field that I just went into. Later that night, she becomes a victim of sexual assault. And so the New York Manhattan's top prosecutor says that an assaulter cannot be charged with sex crimes because of a legal loophole, stipulating that someone who becomes voluntarily intoxicated is not considered mentally incapacitated for purposes of giving consent. But there is no difference between an intoxicated individual's ability to consent to sexual acts when he or she was drugged and an intoxicated individual's ability to consent when she voluntarily drank alcohol or took narcotics. District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. wrote to the governor, Andrew Cuomo, in an April 2018 letter reviewed by the Washington Post. And so this is scary. I don't even think people are really paying attention to it. And so when something happens and they know that they've been raped or they know they've been violated or assaulted and they go to the police, they can't get any help. So Vance's letter, first reported this week by NBC New York, urges that Mr. Cuomo to push for legislation that would eradicate the requirement that a victim's intoxication was involuntary. And so if a reasonable person should have known that the victim was drunk, Vance wrote that the assailant should not be shielded from prosecution. And so New York is not alone in treating voluntary and involuntary intoxication differently in sexual assault cases, which is scary. And so most states only explicitly say that drunkenness implies a lack of consent if the intoxication was involuntary, according to the Brooklyn Law Review. It's an article published on 2016 about this type of law. And so about 10 states' definitions of mental incapacitation it includes voluntary intoxication by the time that the article was published. And so if you want to read more, it says rape victims at mercy of postcode lottery over justice. Okay, so that's probably a separate article that's sort of in relation to this. And so the law in New York relies on the fact that someone who was voluntarily intoxicated at the time of an alleged assault may not remember everything that happened, including whether they agreed to have sex, Mr. Vance says. But he said it may have been clear to the assailant that the victim lacked the mental capacity to consent. So Vance pointed to the case of Kenneth Moreno and Franklin Mata, then in New York City, police officers whom, this is 2011, were acquitted of charges that they had raped an intoxicated woman after helping her while on patrol. So existing law made it hard for the prosecutors to prove that the woman had not agreed to sex. And so Mr. Vance said, but it should have been apparent to the officers that she could not consent. So no one should be able to assault you simply because you put yourself in a case where dangerous things might happen, Mr. Vance said. Similarly, if someone is drinking voluntarily and they become excessively drunk, that's not a green light for someone to sexually assault you. Of course, I agree with that. But as their law is putting it, that person that is the assaulter is not going to be held responsible. And so it's almost like laying it in the lap of the person that voluntarily or involuntarily, however you got intoxicated, that it's sort of your responsibility. So whatever happens, happens. You're on your own type of situation. So Charlize Theron, Scold's French TV host for Kissing Interpreter, consent. Okay, without consent. So the governor's office had to respond to Vance's 16-month-old letter as of a Saturday morning, Vance said. So Rich Azzopardi, a senior advisor to Mr. Cuomo, said the governor's office had no record of receiving the missive. Okay, so he did not respond to the questions whether that Mr. Cuomo believes that a loophole exists or whether Mr. Cuomo will promote legislation to change the definition of mentally incapacitated. Okay, so Mr. Cuomo's office will continue to do everything we can to protect victims, bring abusers to justice, and build up the work we've done, which included enacting the Child Victims Act, extending the statute of limitations for second and third degree rape, and putting into place the strongest protections in the nation to combat sexual assault on college campuses and sexual harassment in the workplace, Mr. Azzopardi said in a statement. And so here's the district attorney right here again, Senator Alessandro Biaggi, on Friday introduced a bill that would expand the definition of mentally incapacitated to include someone who has become voluntarily intoxicated. Voluntarily. Okay, so she said that she was unaware of the exception for voluntary drunkenness until this week and hoped that the legislation would pass a bill quickly when it reconvenes in January. So if the law doesn't protect them, then how can we expect these people that are being abused to speak up ever? So we can't, Ms. Biaggi said. So the law has to at least be on par with a place where we can protect people and hopefully change the culture. So Alexandra Zeet Moskin, a spokeswoman for the New York City Alliance Against Sexual Assault, said that the current definition of mental incapacitation underscores the societal assumption that someone who is drunk or has been drinking takes on a certain degree of risk. So changing that law, she predicted, will be difficult. And so I think it will be a really challenging feat, actually. And the reason that it's been so pervasive in a lot of states. Now, this is not just New York that this law is, or this ideology that if a woman has drank too much or involuntarily or however she got drunk, she's drunk, intoxicated, that, people can take advantage of her. And so this is in a lot of states. So the prosecutor, whoever, if there's an assault, sexual assault done, that they have a hard time proving that the person that was intoxicated or the woman that's intoxicated did not consent to sex. So it's like in the heads, it's sort of like, let's call it what it is, misogynistic. That if the woman's drunk, she asked for it. She put herself out there. She put herself at risk. She asked for it. She put herself in a predicament. She should have known better. And so, um, now, what if it was the other way around? If it was a man and he gets drunk and somebody takes advantage of him, I mean, it doesn't have to mean just sexual assault. He could get robbed. He could get beaten, So how do they feel about that? So we could flip it around, but it goes on to say, I think it will be really challenging feat actually. And the reason that it's been so pervasive in a lot of states is that there is a cultural perception that if someone has been drinking, that in some ways they are consenting. Right. So Ms. Zeed Moskin said, so Vance, known as a reform-minded prosecutor, has been criticized by some as too soft on alleged sexual abusers. And so his office in 2011 dropped charges against Dominique Strauss-Kahn, former director of International Monetary Fund, after a maid alleged that he had forced her to perform sexual acts. So in 2015, Vance declined to prosecute now disgraced film mogul Harvey Weinstein for allegedly groping a woman without her consent. And so Carrie Goldberg, a victims' rights attorney in New York City, said that although she supports expanding definition of mental incapacitation, she also felt Vance's letter made excuses for his decisions not to prosecute difficult sex crimes cases. And so a woman accused Indian politician of rape hit by truck someone who sexually assaulted a voluntarily intoxicated person. A voluntarily intoxicated person could be criminally charged under other sections of the state law, Ms. Goldberg said. But if someone uses forcible compulsion, that overpowers a victim with physical force of threats to compel a drunk person to have sex. Ms. Goldberg said that the person lacked consent and could be prosecuted. So she said in a situation almost always involves forcible compulsion when one person is too drunk to resist sexual advances. So Mr. Vance said his prosecutor had used the laws available to them to pursue all of the sexual assault cases that they thought they could win. This is not a group that's interested in trying to favor individuals who they think sexually assaulted someone, he said. If we have a charge that we think we can prove, we do. So this is out of the Washington Post. And so there are other related articles that have similar issues, like the one I was just reading earlier, the early part of the article, Read More, Rape Victim at Mercy of Postcode Lottery Over Justice. We must listen to women who had to watch their children murdered. Man accused of murdering and eating woman granted mistrial. Rape victim facing 40 years for stillbirth cleared. And some other things. So I'm not even going to go into that. Follow the leader. Mentality is key. Mentality is key. Characteristic of a gang rape. Okay, so anyway, this is scary. I just thought this was an interesting article because I don't think women really pay much attention to how laws impact them gender-wise. And so they don't really think about, okay, well, what if I go to this club by myself, or I'm with a couple of friends and we get separated, I've had too much to drink, or maybe you're not a drinker. Maybe you're drinking water, you're drinking soda, and somebody slips something in your drink, and then you look like you've been drunk, or you voluntarily got drunk. And does that give a right for a person to take advances on you? Make it sexual assault towards you, to where now you're in a situation and now you're trying to prove that you weren't drunk, that you were drinking water or soda, and that you didn't consent to sex. And so now they can't get a case on this person, so you walk scot-free while you've been assaulted. Your body's been violated. You don't know if the person's, they've got diseases, their sexual history, what kind of stuff, how many people they've done this to in that same club. Or wherever you're at, and then the ideology, well, she's out at the club, that's a risk that's involved when you go to a club as a female, that misogynistic view that people have out there of females, that if they go to a nightclub or if they go out with a group of friends or they're by themselves and they're in a predicament where there's a possible chance that something like this could occur, that they kind of ask for it. And so I don't think women usually don't think about these things. But, rapists who target drunk women cannot be charged with rape under New York law, prosecutor says. So there are some clubs where women, they may not even be drinking alcohol. You could be drinking water, or you could have like a soda, and maybe you're holding in your hand. You're thinking it's safe in your hand. Somebody walks alongside of you, the club is packed, they slip a couple of drops of something and knock you out. So there's a lot of things that can happen with this that can put you in a vulnerable position. You may not even have been drinking. Somebody could follow you outside of the club when you're going to your car. Now, that's the last time I remember, and I know when I was a lot younger. And I'll say this to share a story, that I stopped going to frequenting these little night spots because people were starting to follow women outside of the establishments, outside of clubs, nightclubs, and they'd be around by your car, harassing you, trying to get you to go with them, or they think they're watching you, and maybe you didn't even drink. They put something in your drink and they know you're gonna get drowsy or whatever, and they're waiting for you to like knock out so they can drag you and put you in the back seat of their car or whatever, and take advantage of you or take you somewhere in a corner and violate you. And so all of this, I don't think people take into account. And so, I know there's a new generation of young women that go out and they like to have fun, and it might be innocent, but, there are predators out there, and you have to really protect yourself, because with laws like this pretty much puts you in a situation where even the laws don't even protect you. And so I don't think people are realizing that things are changing now. A lot of laws that used to protect people, or laws they thought protect people, never were in place, or they've been changing them in terms of females. And so with that being said, I'm going to leave this. This is sad, but it's true. And so like they said, even not only in New York, it's in other states. And so, some people don't even view women's points of views and what their thoughts and how they feel and about, who they are as a gender, as a woman, it's even important. And so this pretty much reflects the ongoing ideology that women have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Being a woman is hard. It's not easy. And when you have laws like this that either aren't protecting you, or they're not in place, or they're trying to change laws where they don't protect you anymore, like we had the issue with the abortion, they're trying to change that, where women don't even have a choice or a right to their body, what they want to do. This right here tells you, it's not getting any better. And seeing this definitely shows you that it's not getting any better. And so, not all women are walking around armed to the teeth with, weapons and what have you. There's lots of opportunity for this right here to put you in a really bad spot. And some women, they're in violent relationships. Now you don't even have to be in a relationship to be attacked and the law not be on your side. So with having said that, like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for listening.